welcome again, everyone. Good morning. My name is Sandrine. I will be facilitating this session today with the help of my two lovely colleagues, Lorraine Florisson. She has just sent a message in the chat. She will be monitoring the chat today, so please feel free to ask all of your questions in there. She will compile them and then ask them on your behalf during the question time. We also have the help of Kelly. If you can write a message in the chat, Kelly, so that people have your full name. She will be assisting you with any technical difficulties that you might have, so don't hesitate to private message her. And if by mistake or because of connection issues you are logged out of the meeting and have difficulties joining in again, don't hesitate to send her an email. So the poster session is organized in 8 different parts. We have 8 posters that have been uploaded on the EAZA website. Hopefully you have seen them before. We have 7 speakers with us today, and the last author couldn't join because she's in the States and it's a little bit early, but she sent a recording. So basically we will have 10 minutes per speaker. They will present their work, their research, and then you will have 5 minutes to ask your question. If there are more questions that the 5 minute allows, we might have some additional time at the end of the session. Otherwise, we will send you the answer by email to all the attendees of this session. So enough with the boring things. I will leave the floor to our first speaker. So we have actually 2 speakers. It's Lorraine Scotson and Bill Robichaud, respectively the CEO and the president of the Saola Foundation. They will talk about the foundation and the work that they do. So please, Lorraine and Bill, I don't know who wants to start. Please unmute yourself and share your PowerPoint. I will stop sharing mine.
Okay, thank you, Sardine. Hi, everybody. Welcome, and I will share my screen and get going. God, good to see so many people on here. How does that look? All good?
Perfect.
All right, so welcome. My colleague Lorraine Scotson and I, we're just going to take a few minutes to introduce you to a brand new organization that we just launched last week, the Saola Foundation for Annamite Mountains Conservation. And we're just going to give you a brief introduction and of course leave time for you to ask any questions about what we plan to do and about our organization. So in case you don't know, Saola is a large mammal and ungulate that was discovered in the forests of Vietnam only in 1992. And it's now one of the most endangered large mammals in the world. There are no Saolas in captivity. There's probably no more than 100 left in the wild. And in fact, Saola was made the logo of the EAZA Southeast Asia campaign in 2012 and 2013. We are the first registered charity nonprofit organization in the world to focus on saving Saola from extinction and also doing conservation in its home, the Annamite Mountains, which is home to a lot of other endemics, highly threatened other than just Saola. We're working to support what's called the One Plan approach to saving a species, endorsed by IUCN and endorsed by the IUCN SSE's Saola Working Group. So our whole mission is to make a significant contribution to a successful One Plan for Saola. Trying to get to my next slide. We've assembled, we're immensely proud of the team we've assembled to get this done. Saving Saola from extinction isn't going to be easy. Make no mistake about that. So we've been putting together the best team in the world we can find to get this done. And we really think we have a dream team to accomplish this amazing, challenging task. And as I said, we just launched Operation September 1st, had our public launch last week, and we're all really jazzed and excited to get going together on saving Saola. So I'm going to turn it over to Lorraine. We just thought we thought of, for a new organization, what might be some frequently asked questions, and we'll quickly run through those and then let you ask any additional questions that you have. So I'm going to turn it over to I'm serving as president of the Saola Foundation, and Lorraine is our CEO. I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Thanks, Bill. If you can keep that share screen on, that'd be great.
Yep. Oh.
So frequently asked questions. So probably the most, if you just go back one slide.
Yeah.
The most frequently asked question that we get in introducing ourselves is why? Why have you set up a Saola Foundation, and what distinguishes your role in the world of Saola conservation? So for those of you who are well familiar with Saola conservation, the IUCN Saola Working Group is really been the well-known body for Saola conservation. That was set up in 2006. So the Saola Working Group really significantly has advanced the understanding of Saola in the world, done an incredible job building political and scientific support for Saola conservation. As Bill mentioned, they've developed the IUCN approach to Saola conservation, and what that really means is that it's sort of a holistic integration of in situ and ex situ components of Saola conservation work, and culminating in the need for establishing a conservation breeding program in order to prevent extinction of Saola. So the Saola Working Group is a coalition of Saola conservationists, many of whom are members of partner organizations that work in Saola range. So the Saola Foundation, we are a US registered non-profit 501c3 organization. So that means that we're a legal entity, and we can manage finances, employ staff, things like that. Now, we, myself and a small core group of Saola conservationists, including Bill, we developed the Saola Foundation out of an absolute gut instinct that there was a unique and critical role to fill within Saola conservation. And what that is specifically is to, one, to be a fundraising entity to help raise a substantial amount of funds that are going to be necessary to fulfill all aspects of the One Plan approach to saving Saola from extinction, and then with the near-term priority of funding and mobilizing an intensive 2-year search program in Lau PDR for Saola in the wild. At this point in time, we don't know the location of any individual Saola, so we see that as a massive near-term priority to fundraise and then to mobilize that 2-year search program. So that covers why the Saola Foundation is needed. So when was the last confirmed record of a Saola? As I say, we don't know where any individual Saola is right now. The last camera trap photo of a Saola was taken in southern Vietnam in 2013. The last physical evidence we have is of a dead individual that was hung as a trophy on a hunter's wall, also in Vietnam, and that was killed in 2016. Apart from that, we have regular credible reports from local intelligence that work with the communities that live in Saola range, that the experts on the ground, the Saola teams, are constantly in communication with. So there are regular credible reports of active individuals. And then we pair those up with our understanding of the condition of certain patches of forest that have still got prevalence of other snare-sensitive rare species that are still being detected, samba, large antlered muntjac. So the prevalence of those species in some areas makes it more likely that Saola have a hope of still being present. But the reality is that we've got a heck of a long way to go before we can actually determine whether or not Saola can be found in the wild. So I'll pass back on to Bill now.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Lorraine. Oh yeah, a common question we get is, well, can Saola still be saved? We firmly believe it can, and that, or else we wouldn't be doing this. I mean, we put a lot of effort in setting up this organization. We have people with decades of experience in the forests of Laos and Vietnam, and we still think it's out there. What we've realized is our technical advisory team estimates that so far, only about 10% of the effort needed to find the last Saolas has been put into the field in Laos and Vietnam. Because you're talking about maybe a max of 100 animals spread over an area probably the size of the French Alps in very dense, wet forest. And the first step in saving this animal is finding them. And finding them isn't going to be easy, and we still have about 90% of the effort left to go to find the last ones. So how are we going to fund this? One thing that's never been done is we're in a catch-22. We have donors that say, well, we don't believe Saola is still out there, so we're not going to fund you. Well, we can't find the last Saolas without funding. And it's not going to take hundreds of thousands of euros. It's going to take millions of euros to save Saola from extinction. So one of the things that the Saola Working Group or the Saola Foundation is going to do is really focus on finding the major funding that's going to be needed for an all-out 2-year effort to find the last Saolas. And then we can start working on saving the species from extinction. So one of our foci of the organization is going to be doing the types of fundraising that's needed in finding the types of wealthy donors that are needed to really put in the money to save Saola once and for all. These are our founding supporters. Obviously, we need core operating funds to get started. And we're so grateful to these organizations. And you can see there's quite a number of European zoos here amongst the founding donors of the Saola Foundation, whose generosity and support made it possible for us to start operations on September 1st and be here on this session with EAZA. So I think that about covers it. Oh, and obviously in a place like the Annamite Mountains, Laos is a Buddhist country, and the Buddha said no effort is wasted. Given the intensity of the effort we're going to put into the field research to find the last Saolas, we anticipate generating a lot of information about other threatened species in the Annamites, like the new species of muntjac, Annamite striped rabbit, Austin civet, large antlered muntjac, red shank duke, I mean, all sorts of things that will benefit their conservation as well. So we don't see this as any kind of a fool's errand. There's going to be a lot of benefits just from the attempt to find Saola in this intensive way for the next 2 years. I think that's my last slide now. Yeah, so we will open it up to questions now. Thank you very much.
That's perfect, Bill and Lorraine. Perfect timing. Thank you so much. Lorraine Florisson, I will ask you to tell me if there's any question.
There was one from Odd, and she did ask if you would only focus on Saola or if you'd include other species like the Austin civet, but I think you just answered that question. But if you could elaborate a little bit more, what
Sure.
you will anticipate how that works, that would be great.
Yeah, so you've noticed we very consciously chose our name, the Saola Foundation for Annamite Mountains Conservation, because the Annamite Mountains is so important. It is our mission to do other good and bring other benefit for other threatened species in the Annamite Mountains as part of our mission. Our first priority as an organization, however, is going to be fully on Saola, because just accomplishing Saola conservation is going to be an incredibly overwhelming task. So we are going to focus on Saola to start, but just in that effort, as we said, we anticipate generating a lot of benefits for other species while working on Saola. If we can ever get Saola secure, then we do plan to shift our attention specifically to other threatened species in the Annamites.
Yeah, we've called our organization the Saola Foundation for Annamite Mountains Conservation, and in the event that Saola may, and I hope so much that this doesn't happen, but Saola may one become the sort of emblem of the Annamite Mountains if we are sadly unsuccessful, much as the dodo is the emblem for Jersey Zoo, for example. So I saw another question come up as Phil was talking.
Yes, you are very right. Well spotted, Lorraine. Louise Bell is asking, you may have mentioned this already, but what size of space what size of a space of potentially habitat were you thinking that you might need to assess if that is known?
Yeah, that's pretty, it's vast. So for Europeans, about the size of the French Alps, it would be equivalent to the Annamite Mountains. For people in the US, the state of New Jersey, so roughly around 22,000 kilometers squared. Now, our search effort is going to be focused in Laos predominantly, so we're not covering that entire area. The Annamite Mountains sort of straddle the border between much of Laos and Vietnam. So it's going to be a smaller area, but still just absolutely vast when you consider that there are, you know, at best 100 individuals scattered around in unknown locations. So it's a staggering task to find individual Saola. And then when we do find them, we have to find them in a way that exponentially increases our ability to find the next one. So it's not just about getting a camera trap photo, it's about developing a methodology that enables us to quickly and efficiently find more Saola.
Thank you very much. There's a few more questions that actually came in. So EAZA has established EAZA ex situ management plan for the Saola. And how do you think that zoos can contribute to Saola conservation without just thinking of the funding? Is there any other things that zoos could get involved in that you think would be helpful?
I think what's already going on is we've seen the zoos providing technical advice and support so the Saola working group is overseeing development of a captive breeding center at Bac Ma National Park in Vietnam. And a lot of the people involved in planning that and designing that center are from the zoo community. So certainly funding is one. And for zoos, I think it's a great thing to fund because zoos are under a lot of pressure to show their public that they're not just about maintaining animals in captivity, and all the activities in the zoo aren't just about animals in the zoo, but they're also about conserving animals in nature. And actually, if a zoo supports Saola conservation, I mean, what better way to demonstrate to your public that it's not really about only animals in your zoo when you're supporting conservation in the wild and saving from extinction an animal that no zoo holds. So I think Saola is a great opportunity for zoos when it comes to funding and also this technical support to a successful ex situ program.
Thank you very much. A few more questions came in, so thank you very much to the audience for asking this. I think it's very good.
I think though, if we want to stick to the timing, maybe we'll stop here for these questions.
That's fine.
But we might have more time at the end, so please compile them somewhere.
Just please you can go on our website, www.saolafoundation.org, and please feel free to send any questions to Lorraine or me. Just get on our website and you'll find our contact points there, saolafoundation.org. And send a check also. You can do that on the website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill and Lauren. I would like to now introduce the next speaker, Lorraine Miller, who is the Deputy Team Leader of Great Apes at Twycross Zoo. She has sent me her presentation that I will share. And she will tell us about her experience with moving apes within and outside of their zoo.
Hi, my name's Lorraine Miller. I'm the Deputy Team Leader of Great Apes at Twycross Zoo, and I'll be presenting my poster on group moves of great apes. The process of moving any animal can be very complex, especially a large, dangerous animal such as a great ape. There are many considerations to take into account. Where is the animal moving to? How will it be transported by plane or truck or van? Will you be using an external company for the move? Will there be any other animals in the same vehicle? When will it take place? Do you have to consider things like temperature control? Will you have to sedate the animal, or will it be crate trained? And that's not even thinking about any of the paperwork involved. But does it differ with a group of animals? I'll be using 3 case studies and drawing on my own personal experiences to highlight considerations that may occur during a transport of several great apes. The first case study was an international transfer of 3 male gorillas from Australia to New Zealand to form the country's first bachelor group. Once the building was finished, a plan was set up to move the gorillas. The first major consideration of this group move was the decision to bring all these 3 together into the same zoo, as opposed to picking up the animals from different areas. Australia is a very large country, and by moving the animals into the same zoo, the international part of the transport would be a lot quicker and smoother. 2 of the gorillas were hand injectable, so the decision was made to hand inject those 2 and then dart the 3rd one. This in itself presented a few problems. The trainers would have to inject at the same time, as the enclosure beds were in visual contact with each other, so it was assumed that once one was injected, it would put the other one off, which unfortunately it did. As it turned out, only one was injected successfully and the others had to be darted. The 3 gorillas travelled by freight plane and arrived in New Zealand, where they were loaded onto the truck. Now, the order they were loaded onto the plane wasn't too much of an issue. There was plenty of bodies and machinery and equipment and space to manoeuvre the crates around. For the order they would need to go onto the truck, it had to be thought over very carefully. There was only 1 crate attachment point in the beds at the other end, and so the animals would need to be unloaded immediately and be moved down through the beds to allow the next animal to be unloaded. Also thinking further ahead, we had to take introductions into consideration and who needed to be introduced first and therefore in the next bed. It was decided that the youngest and smallest would be unloaded first and then moved down through the beds to the end, and then the second juvenile, as these two would be introduced first, followed by the blackback, who was unloaded and also introduced last. The next case study was an in-house move of 17 chimpanzees into a new enclosure. These were in two groups, one of 13 and one of 4. As chimps have very complex social systems, this particular group was made up of several strong adult males, including a young up-and-coming male and several strong, confident females as well. The most important consideration was which animals should be moved and with who. A groupings plan was put together consisting of potentially 4 individuals per day for 4 days. This gave some leeway if certain animals couldn't be moved for any reason. There would be spare time at the end of the week to accommodate that. For this particular group, it was important that the dominant male should stay in the group with the up-and-coming male for as long as possible, as there would undoubtedly be a power struggle if the younger male were to be left unchecked, if the dominant male were to be removed, and depending on which females were left behind, either new alliances could also be formed, which may cause further issues later on in the group, or loyal females may potentially become aggressive to the younger male in the absence of the dominant one. The team also had to be aware of the individuals that would be getting to the new exhibit first and how they would cope as well. So we decided the groups contained a confident female and a couple of more subordinate animals. There were also certain pairings that the keepers knew to avoid due to personality clashes. As with the same as people, some apes just really don't get on or like each other. Even though there were some last minute changes to the grouping, due to certain individuals not wanting to separate, all the animals were hand injected, health checked and moved over safely. The group of 4 was moved over several months later, all in one day, because they would be remaining separate for integration into the main group anyway at a later date. Staffing was also a consideration with this move that would last several days, as not only would they need to have enough staff to complete the actual move, they've now also got an extra exhibit to manage. The team was split into 2, a loading team and a receiving team. This also included splitting the vet teams as well, as multiple procedures would need to be occurring at once. The final case study is another international move of 8 bonobos. 4 were brought into the UK and 4 were also transferred out to Belgium in the same day. Much like the chimp move, the team had to be split into 2 for this one. Team 1 would be receiving the first 4 bonobos, and then Team 2 would be injecting, health checking and crating the second 4. Pre-planning was key here, with 8 animals to consider and a reduced time frame. There were going to be times that the 2 teams would need to be working at the same time with different animals. The bonobos who weren't involved in the move were shut outside to minimise stress and vocalisations. The 4 who would be leaving, 2 mothers and 2 sons, were in one day place on one side, and the other side of the day place was left empty for the new arrivals. The 4 bonobos, 1 female and her 3 sons that were brought in, ready to be unloaded. It was decided that before the Team 1 started moving any of their crates, Team 2 would ask their bonobos to come into the beds and separate for training. It was assumed that vocalisations by unfamiliar bonobos next door may deter them from coming into the beds at all. However, they couldn't start injecting or hand injecting the 4 bonobos that were going to leave until the vet team had okayed the new arrivals to be healthy, and then they were ready to switch teams. Team 1 were then ready to unload. Similarly to the gorillas in New Zealand, considerations had to be made for the unloading with regards to running the bonobos through multiple beds and into the day place, as again there were only 1 crate attachment point on one of the beds. All 4 unloaded well, and one by one they were let into the day place to explore. Team 2 were then asked to start hand injecting. The first 2 bonobos were a mother and a 2-year-old son, so that was the youngest of the 2. An important aspect that was considered with both of the mother and son combos were in what order they should be sedated. It was decided that the mother with the 2-year-old son would be first, and as he was still clinging to mum, the decision was also made to hand inject only her. This was due to the potential risks a sedated youngster would pose if the hand injecting of the mother didn't go to plan, and once the mother was sedated, the teams went in and manually injected the youngster. As there were 3 beds and 4 bonobos, another consideration was safety. as the team would be working without a buffer bed to avoid mesh contact with the bonobos, which would be the normal protocol. The first 2 were health checked and crated, and the 3rd and 4th were hand injected, which luckily didn't affect their training at all. The logistics of fitting all the crates into the van took a little bit of extra time, and additional machinery and things were needed to manipulate the crates, which was an unforeseen consideration, but the rest of the transport actually went really smoothly. There's many considerations when conducting a group moves of great apes that take time and extensive pre-planning in order to run smoothly, but as long as the teams are prepared and work well together, then anything is achievable.
All right. Lauren Miller is with us. If there is any question, I didn't see any in the chat, but I was wondering, because you have to anesthetize the animals all the time, if there were something you could do to reduce the stress of the animal when it's a group move.
Yeah, so anaesthetising an animal, it's better if you can hand inject them. They're far less stressed. And like I was saying before, if you can separate them quietly and calmly before, especially if there's a lot of different animals moving at the same time, if you try to reduce visual boundaries, visual communication, and vocal communication between the groups as well, that can calm them down quite a lot. So what we did is split the groups down quite a lot, especially with the larger group, like the 17 chimps, split it down into groups of 3s or 4s, and then everything becomes a little bit calmer. And then if you can hand inject, or if you can crate train, actually, that's a lot less stressful for them as well.
Okay. Lauren, we don't have any other question, right?
No, there was no questions in the chat, but feel free to post them, people, if you have them, because we still have some time for questions, I think, Sandrine?
Yes, we do. But maybe people need a little bit of time to think about their question, and we can also move on to the next speaker, and then we'll have time at the end for additional questions if nobody...
Yeah, they're currently not seeing any questions pop up, so I'll save any other questions for at the end, Lorraine, if that's all right.
Yep, sure.
All right, well, thank you very much, Lorraine. So I'm going to present the 5th speaker, and I'm going to kill his name, Wojciech Kopczyk. Sorry, apologies. He's from Toruń Zoobotanical Garden, and he will be presenting some of his thesis results. He looks at the effects of a change of diets in orangutan, and he has done this research at Gdańsk Zoo. I will share his presentation.
Good morning. My name is Wojciech Kopczyk, and I would like to present the results of my research, the influence of nutrition on the behavior and blood glucose level of orangutans in Gdańsk Zoo, which was my master thesis topic. The aim of my research was determination of behavior changes and blood glucose concentration in orangutans living in the Gdańsk Zoo, switching to a diet with a limited share of fruits and root vegetables for a diet with higher proportion of fibrous products. Researchers in recent years have revolutionized nutrition of primates in captivity. It has been proven that feeding primates predominantly with sweet fruit can have negative impact for their health and behavior. Nowadays, we believe that we should offer more fiber in the diet, even if animals would prefer to eat sweet fruits. Research has shown that more than 50% of individuals in the AEP program are overweight or obese, and it can have impact for the breeding and welfare of this endangered species. But mean that it's really important topic now. The research was conducted in Gdańsk Zoo in 3 stages from September 2018 to May 2019, and 2 animals took part in this research, a male Albert and female Raya, who were in age of 47, and they are the only 2 orangutans in Poland now. I made several analyses. First of them was the analysis of the components of daily food ration, divided into 5 groups: fruits, leafy vegetables group A, low sugar vegetables group B, and high starch root vegetables group C, and others. I made also analysis of the chemical composition of the feed diets. We made Vendenian analysis and water-soluble carbohydrates analysis. We were testing of fasting blood glucose level using a commercial blood glucometer, and it was made once a week before eating and 2 hours after meal. I made also behavioral observation using ethogram, dividing behaviors into 4 groups: food behavior, activity, rest, and interactions. And the energy value of the diets was examined, and finally statistic done. As we can see, the component composition of diet was changed. There were more leafy green vegetables and less fruits and high starch root vegetables in the final stage. It has an impact for chemical composition of the diet. We saw increase of crude fiber and neutral detergent fiber, while level of water-soluble carbohydrates decrease. By the way, the protein content increased, reaching the level of the orangutan nutritional recommendation in the 3rd stage. The change of the diet also reduced the energy concentration. In combination with the wide reduction of the dose, this resulted in a dose reduction from 4,000 to 2,500 kilocalories in the final stage in the dose per day. This chart shows the percentage of individual behaviors in all animals at the different stages of the study. It shows that both Raya and Albert, the share of food activity and behavior increased, when time spent for rest and no active behavior decreased. Moreover, at every stage of the research, Albert was more active than the female. And we saw the really positive impact, which is observed also now. The study also found that Albert's glucose level dropped in both his fasting and postprandial glucose level. The study also ruled out diabetes in Albert. And these results were possible thanks medical training of the keeper. And there you can see a short summary of my research, which is also on the poster. And thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for all the people who made this project possible.
Thank you, Wojciech. Are you able to unmute yourself, Wojciech, for possible questions?
Yeah.
You were joining us from your car. Yeah. Okay, great. Do you have any question, Lorraine?
Not yet, but maybe people can drop them into the chat over the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, I had a question for you actually. You said that 54% of the orangutan in the EEP were obese. Do we have any idea of how many institutions are trying to change the diet for these animals?
Hello, I don't know exactly how many institutions, but I know that several in different countries are trying to change the diet, but I'm a little afraid that not enough at the moment are trying to change that.
Okay. I see that we have a question in the chat.
We had a question from Sharon, and Sharon, please do elaborate if I'm missing the question, but she's asking what about Raj's blood glucose levels changes, and obviously did they both lose weight as a result of the diet changes?
Yes, maybe I would try to answer this question first. We just checked the male blood glucose level because it was easier to make medical training with a male and it was harder with females, so we haven't enough data from the female, so that's the reason. And second question, it was quite hard to white animals. We haven't equipment to check exactly weight of them. I made only observation for using pictures from different stages, and using these pictures, I can say I can try say that they both lose weight.
Thank you very much. There was no further questions at the moment. Oh, actually, sorry, there was. Let me see. Okay, so this is a question that there's fewer zoo-based or zoo-housed Sumatran orangutans than Bornese orangutans. Do you know why this may be? Not sure if this is a question you can answer.
To be honest, I have no idea, but it's very interesting to check that. It's really hard to say. I just wondering maybe seasons on the Sumatra and Borneo are different, so natural diet of these two species is different, but I'm just wondering.
Thank you. And another question came in. Do you have any recommendations for any other methods of managing the weight that can be implemented alongside the diet, a diet change?
I think yes, there could be some ways to check weight, and I hope it will take part in the Zoo Gdańsk, but it's also not very new enclosure for the orangutans, so it's a little bit hard to implement some measures in this area.
Thank you very much. There was at the moment no further questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Wojciech, for stopping. You were in your car, so thank you so much for joining and for taking the time to be with us today. Will you be staying with us the rest of the time in case there are some more questions in the chat?
Yes, I will stay as long as possible, and I will be happy to answer all the another questions.
Great. Well, safe travels in the meantime, and
thank you.
I'll see you at the end. So I'll introduce our next speaker. She's not here today because she's from Ohio, and I think it's like 5 a.m. there. But she had sent us a recording. It's Madeline Winans. She's a research associate at the Center for Human-Animal Interactions Research and Education. So she's studying welfare in California sea lions. Although she's not here today, please feel free to ask your question in the chat box and we will collect them and send them to her, of course. Let me share her recording.
Hello, my name is Madeline Winans, and I am a master's student in the Department of Animal Sciences. Presented here is my project titled Establishment of Baseline Levels for California Sea Lion Welfare. Given that zoos now commonly translocate animals between institutions, and such processes are known to have potential welfare concerns, Columbus Zoo and Aquarium partnered with the Department of Animal Sciences to conduct a long-term welfare assessment of their California sea lions in response to relocation from a temporary facility to a permanent habitat at Columbus Zoo. The objective of the project presented here was to assess the baseline welfare levels of the sample population of sea lions, a total of 7 individuals, by measuring behavior as well as hair cortisol concentrations as an indicator of potential chronic stress. Regarding the impact on the sea lion's behavior, we hypothesized that sex will have no effect, younger individuals will be less likely to perform inactive than active behavior, and inactive behavior will be more likely than active behavior following a change in staff and in later periods. Regarding the sea lion's hair cortisol concentrations, we hypothesized that sex will have no effect, but age, change in staff, and period will be negatively correlated with hair cortisol concentrations. Through our use of scan sampling based on a validated ethogram, we found that period and change in training staff were significantly associated with the odds of performing inactive behavior over active behavior. These results are presented both in Table 1 as well as in Figure 2 below here. In Figure 2, on the x-axis are the values for the odds and associated confidence intervals, and the significant factor comparisons are present on the y-axis. We can see that the sea lions were more likely to perform inactive behavior than active behavior during periods 2 and 4 compared to period 5, and less likely to perform inactive behavior in period 1 compared to period 5, which served as our reference. Additionally, we found that inactive behavior was less likely than active behavior when the sea lions were being cared for and trained by an inconsistent staff group and an unchanging staff. From our analysis of hair cortisol concentrations using an EAZA, we found that the change in training staff and period were significantly correlated with hair cortisol, as demonstrated in this figure. Here, Figure 3, the x-axis indicates the period and staff group, and the y-axis is the least square means of hair cortisol concentrations in picograms per milligram. The spike that we see in period 2 here is partially due to the birth of a pup which occurred during this period and who was included in our sample population. The significant differences were consistent with and without the juvenile included in the sample, and their associated data points were not found to be statistical outliers, so they were included for analysis. Overall, we found that sex had no effect on either parameter, although this may be due to the 2 to 5 female to male ratio in our sample. Additionally, contrary to our hypotheses, we found no effect of age on likelihood of active versus inactive behavior, but did find a significant difference in hair cortisol concentrations between the juvenile and adults. The major finding of this project was that we determined period and training staff to be significant predictors of both hair cortisol concentrations and behavior in zoo-housed California sea lions, which is consistent with the current literature on animals in human care. With this study, we were able to contribute to a gap in marine mammal welfare literature by establishing a species-specific range of hair cortisol concentration values and assessing these values in response to potential welfare concerns. As to our knowledge, this biomarker has not been assessed in this species previously. These findings serve as baseline measures for the sample population and may be reassessed against post-relocation measures to determine the impact of relocation on the animal's welfare, further contributing to the field of marine mammal welfare science.
All right. Again, if you have any questions for Madeline, don't hesitate to put them in the chat and we will send them to her. So our next speaker is Jan Mengr. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, sorry. He's working on his PhD at the Czech University of Life Science, Prague. And he will talk about the future of the rare bactrian deer population in EAZA. I will share his presentation for him. Just a second, please.
Hello, my name is Jan Mengr. Sorry you cannot see me because I wasn't able to figure out how to add the recording from my webcam into the presentation. Some of you may know me as a former ESB keeper for bactrian deer from Chomutov. At this time, I'm working on my PhD on the Faculty of Tropical Agri-Science at the Czech University of Life Science in Prague. And today, I would like to encourage you to see our poster about the current status and unclear future of the EAZA bactrian deer population. In this picture, you can see a bactrian deer male. It's a lowland subspecies of Tarim deer. It's native to Central Asia, and according to the IUCN, its conservation status is least concern, which is one of the reasons why the role of the EAZA population is an insurance population. To tell you something about the program, well, the program has a well-known pedigree and a stud book containing information about 661 individuals from 35 institutions from 1945 until present. The problem is that the population is decreasing in the past few years, and also the age structure is a bit problematic, and even the predictions for the population future are very unclear at this point. So what can be done to stop the decreasing trend? Well, the program definitely needs more participating institutions. Some cooperation with non-EAZA institutions willing to hold bachelor groups would be also great, and then is also some research needed to improve the husbandry. This is actually my task, which will hopefully help to create the best practice guideline for the species. So that's all from my side now. Thank you for your time and attention. For more information about the populations and the ongoing research, please see our poster. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. You're here with us today. Maybe you want to add some information?
Probably not, but
okay.
as you saw, the presentation was really quick, so I'm open to all the questions and looking forward for them.
Maybe we can also mention that there is a long-term management plan for deers that has been published quite recently for our member to find on the member area if they are interested for more information.
Yes, and of course, one of the most important purposes of this poster, actually because the research is on the beginning, is to encourage the zoos to participate on the program and to keep those species, because the decrease in the numbers of individuals in the study book is caused, for example, also by institutions stopping to participate during the last 10 years.
Okay. Yes, I made a mistake. It's not the long-term management plan. Sorry, it's the regional collection plan. Thank you, Elmar. Do we have any questions for Jan?
Not yet, but I would definitely encourage people to put their questions in the chat and we can ask them.
Well, maybe we will continue with the next presentation and we can go back. We will have now plenty of time for a question session at the end. So if you think about a question in the meantime, don't be shy. And thank you again, Jan, for your presentation.
Fine, thank you.
So maybe because that was our last speaker, we can just let people raise their hand if they want to ask questions.
We did have one more question coming into the chat for Jan. Jan, if you'd be able to take that. And the question was from Rosie, that if they are classified as least concerned by the IUCN, what is the importance of the captive management program? Perhaps you could also talk a little bit about the roles.
Yes, it was actually a question which was made also by the decision process on the RCP workshop last year. I think it was last year. Yes, the problem is that the home range of the species, or the species area in the wild, it isn't really known for its political stability. So it easily could happen that that the numbers in the wild would rapidly decrease in case of some civil war or whatever, and people could easily eat them all, and we will not be able to react for that. So that's the purpose of the insurance population in the EAZA.
Thank you, Jan, for the explanation. Maybe, Lorraine, we can go through the question that you compiled. I think we had some more left with the Saola Foundation.
No, they were all answered.
Ah, they were all answered? Okay.
But there is another question for you. I'm assuming we're now going to just go to open questions.
Yes.
There is another question for Jan. This is from Elmar. Genetic diversity seems currently very low in combination with the very small population size. How can it function as an insurance population, and are there any plans to increase genetic diversity?
I would say it's a bit another story, because the research I'm mentioning at the poster is more about affecting sex ratio and survival. But we are actually planning to start another research which will focus on genetics. And first of all, we need to make some genetic analysis of the whole EAZA population, because we are somehow not sure if those numbers are really right, because those numbers just came from the stud book. And yeah, I don't know if all of the stud book keepers were able to record those animals properly, and yeah. So we have to analyze it, and another step would be to compare it actually to the wild populations, and then we could actually decide if it would maybe make sense to introduce some new founders or somehow raise the genetic diversity or not. So yeah, that's all I can say now.
Thank you. And here's another question for Jan in relation to the other question Rosie asked before. In regards to your answer, do you think that this is why there is not much interest in zoos holding them and their captive management?
Well, sorry, I have to read this question again because I'm somehow unsure.
Let me just scroll back up a little bit. So Rosie before, 1 second. Sorry. Rosie before asked a question of the importance of the captive management program in relation to them being classed as least concerned by the IUCN. And you answered that question for her, and now she's asking a follow-up of that, if you think that is the reason why they are not, why there's not so much interest in zoos holding them or having their captive or being involved in their captive management.
Fine. To be honest, I have no idea. One of the common ideas is that bactrian deer is just looking very similar to other deer species, so maybe that's the reason why there is not such an interest to keep them. They are not violet with green points and whatever. So that could be one reason. Second reason could be that you need a lot of space to keep bactrian deer. They are not quite suitable for small exhibits, so it's putting very much pressure on the zoos to have big exhibits. Yeah, I don't know if the conservation status is really somehow affecting how zoos are interested into keeping bactrian deer. I hope not, because yeah. Another reason could be that, at least in Czech Republic, I think one of the things we are thinking about when deciding if we should start to keep a species or not, is if it has a good program, how the program works, and obviously if it is in a program, because you have to manage program animals differently than non-program animals. So at some point you could actually say that the status of an EEP could be against keeping those species, but yeah, that's how I feel. I don't really know.
Thank you, Jan. We had another question to the Saola Foundation. And Bill, I know that you've answered the question a little bit in the chat, but the question was, how will you involve the local community in your research? So if you could elaborate a little bit more on that, that would be really helpful.
So I'll answer this one. So the reality is that I don't believe the work would be possible without working closely with local communities in Saola Range. Because they're so difficult to detect, we rely heavily on the intelligence of, and for the most part, it's local indigenous tribes that live in different parts of the Annamites. So we rely on them for intelligence because they're out in the forest hunting and gathering resources to survive, and they're the most likely to know historically and presently the location of individual Saola. So there's a heavy reliance on that local intelligence. And likewise, a reliance that they want to share that information. So the teams that we have in Lao have spent a lot of time, and this has been working under the Saola working group predominantly, building relationships with local communities, so that there is that trust and that sort of motivation to share intelligence. Another side of it, as we go forward, a big part of the strategy for finding wild Saola will be an effort to recruit skilled local trackers that have the ability to recognize Saola sign and the ability to follow fresh trails of Saola. So we're hoping ultimately to enlist international wildlife trackers who can help us evaluate the skills of local trackers, and then we can identify expert local trackers who will then join detection teams. So I think that about covers it. I just also wanted to quickly make one quick addition. Our funder slide we got a new funder right at the end, and we weren't able to get the logo in. So I just wanted to thank Anna and Radislav from the Wrocław Zoo, who just joined us as founding donors of the Saola Foundation. So wanted to slip that in there.
Very smoothly. Does anybody else have any questions to what was already said here, or what you would like to chat about? Please do raise your hand or pop the questions into the chat, and we can ask them for you if you have any bad internet connection.
I don't see any hand raised.
No, me neither.
Would any of the speakers want to add something before we close the session? I don't see either anyone unmuting. So I guess if we don't have any more questions, we can wrap up this session. Once again, I would like to thank all the speakers for joining us today and for preparing recordings and for their great posters. Again, if you haven't seen them, please go visit them, download them and look at them. I would like to thank you all for joining today and remind you that we still have a closing plenary this afternoon. So if you want to join us, please do. It's not too late to register, and it's also going to be live streamed on Facebook. So please join us. And again, the recording will be available. I have been told that this one will also be uploaded to YouTube when the speakers have given us their approval, of course. So I just want to wish you a great rest of the day. Hope to see you at the next session, and goodbye. If you could please leave the meeting except for our speakers so that we can do a group pictures, that would be awesome. Thank you.